Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for joining today's session on getting hired and really nailing the product case study interview, which I think for a lot of product management folks on this call will definitely find very helpful and useful. This presentation is going to be very tactical and very execution focused, and I may speed through certain aspects fairly quickly, but you don't need to worry. I'll share these slides after the call in the Slack channel, and that way everybody else can kind of get a glimpse as to how to essentially perfect their product cases going forward and also what not to do. So without further ado, let's get started. So I think for today's talk, let's just, first of all, I'll do a quick introduction of myself. We'll talk about what these product cases are and really the 4 W's around them. Then I want to focus on how you can structure your case and then use this throughout every interview and every company that you are targeting. Then focus on 3 sample case studies that I've personally done, and we're going to critique each one and go through the good and the bad, and which ones are great examples, which ones are not so great. And then we'll have some key takeaways at the end. So that's the main goal for today's talk. Of course, we want to thank our sponsors, Pragmatic Institute, Texas McCombs, and 280 Group. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to have this conference and this forum. So make sure you go and explore some of these institutions and see if they can help you. So let's start off with number 1. Who am I? So I'm the one today that's going to hopefully in the next 30 minutes get you through that next interview round, because you know the right skill sets and the right structure you need to do to hop that barrier and get that recruiting manager excited to bring you on board. So that's the person. Little background about me. So my name is Nick Ivanecky. I'm currently a senior product manager at Dun & Bradstreet, working on their attribution reporting team. And before that, also was a product manager at Adobe, working on their customer support platform. So anytime any of their users had problems with Photoshop, Illustrator, they would go onto the support forum, and I, the PM, would need to kind of manage the marketplace, if you will. And then I'm also a mentor and also co-founder of ProductHire.com. That's a service where if you want to, let's say, advance in your career, both in getting coaching mentorship or networking and going to different events, we supply all that information on ProductHire.com. So definitely check that out. But that's a quick intro of who I am. So without further ado, let's get started on what these product cases are. So what is a case study? It can be the following. It can be a skill assessment. It can be a presentation that you might need to deliver. It can be a feature launch. And in terms of skill assessment, it's really companies giving you a problem or some type of prompt to then you need to go about and solve or create a potential solution using kind of these product management skill sets that you already have in your current day-to-day role. But what they're trying to do with these prompts is understand how you think, understand how you prioritize, and your way of organizing information, and then being able to present it. That's really what they're looking for in these skill assessments. When it comes time to, let's say, do a presentation, sometimes a presentation and a case study are grouped together, and you will need to present your case study to a panel. Panel could include designers, engineers, head of product, someone a bit more senior, and you will have to kind of understand who the stakeholders are in the room and present your information to them. Again, communicating as a PM is a very essential skill. You need to have it, and presentation can help test that. And lastly, a feature launch. Sometimes in at least my past interviews when I was in the market, being able to share your go-to-market plan with the hiring team, that's something that they'll ask for. It could be a minute point, but they like to know how you think of it and who is involved. So that's important. So now, in terms of when and where would you receive one of these product cases, normally if you make it past the 2nd or 3rd round of interviews, that's when you will be given this product task. And it's from that point on where they potentially can make an assessment of bringing you on board to the final round, or basically rejecting you, and you need to continue, of course, looking for the next interview. So normally it's 2 to 3 interviews in, and the average time usually to complete these assessments, I would say between 5 to 10 hours, but sometimes it may take longer. And the reason for that is these prompts are very specific and tailored to each company, meaning you might not have the industry knowledge that they are essentially wanting to get this potential solution in these product cases about. So it's up to you to do the research, get the secondary market research, understand the space, and then provide your essentially analysis on how you would solve and go about that problem and solve it. So some things just to keep in mind here on the when and the where. And in terms of why a company might give you a product case study, three things that they're looking to test. One, does he or she communicate well? Again, PMs need to communicate across various stakeholders, and it involves a lot of definitely context switching. So going from very tactical, if you're more junior or mid-level PM, to something that is more strategic and very high level, where you have VPs of product and you need to present these new business ideas to them. You need to be able to kind of transition your communication from something more high level, kind of visionary, more business focused, to something more tactical, more technical for engineers and for even designers. So how do you communicate? Very important. Also, they're willing to, or they're looking to test your product rigor. Again, this is just how well you do product management. So do you know the basics? Can you, not require too much onboarding from the hiring team? They will be able to sense that from this product case. Your depth of knowledge, really, and your technical skill set as well. And lastly, the key question that every hiring manager I personally think is looking at is, can I work with him or her? So this is important because they are trying to hire you on a team. You are going to be working with a team, and if they feel that you might not be that team player, you want to be that independent leader, that's not what product management is. You have to rely on others to make sure you can deliver that business value at the company. So that's why normally they would give you a business case study. Now let's focus on structuring your case. So here's a basic formula that I think can be used across any of your business case or any of your interview preparations that you are having. I think this format has kind of delivered good success for me in my previous interviews, and I think it can do the same for you. So let's kind of go through each one at a high level. So first point, again, what's the problem that you're trying to solve? How are you going to address it? And kind of be clear on what it is. Normally, when you are going to be given a prompt, the problem should be listed there. If it's not, ask questions to the recruiter or the hiring manager to make sure you know what the problem is. Second, what are the goals that you want to achieve? That's kind of common knowledge. What are some use cases that you want to focus on? Use cases could be, in this case, B2B related, B2C related, different scenarios. If the prompt, for example, asked you to focus on, let's say, just the India market and just focus on iPhone users, then focus on that particular channel and market, and don't focus on, let's say, North America. So again, be targeted when you do these. They're looking for something specific, and you need to kind of deliver that to them. Next, assumptions are very key and important in my opinion, because they want to know how you are thinking about information you don't have. So in my case, in some of the examples I'll show, one of the examples and my assumptions was in the home insurance industry, what typically is, let's say, the makeup of potentially, converting someone into a new customer from search engine marketing versus, let's say, a referral system, right? Like, I don't necessarily have the right numbers, but it's up to me to create those assumptions, list them, and that way they have context why I'm saying this new calculation or why I made this choice and this decision. So assumptions are key. Make sure you list them. Next, more of a UX, if you're UX background or more design background, it's important to have user flows or something that dictates, well, what is the mock-up or experience you want to create? For me, I'm a visual person. It makes sense to show something visually. In your case, maybe you want to just show flow diagrams. That can also work too. But the point is, it needs to be clear such that the hiring team knows what you are trying to convey, both visually, but also they understand the experience you're proposing. Features and user stories, again, that's common knowledge. They want to know what you are trying to build. The key thing here, though, is being able to prioritize them. So most of the time, recruiters or hiring managers, when they do kind of see your work, they want to understand, well, I'm happy that you have a list of features that you want to build, but which ones should we target first and why? And that's where sometimes you could use a potential framework, but we'll talk a little bit more about frameworks and how they could be both good and bad, but also just being able to use your previous knowledge on how to prioritize things can also help. Again, with go-to-market, what's important here is you need to be able to kind of create that launch strategy. you have a particular feature, and what are you going to do to get it out into the market? Are you going to take it in beta first or alpha, get some feedback, and kind of do something more staggered, or have a staggered launch? Or are you going to do something in B2C space where we're just going to give it to the small subset of users in Europe, see the response, and from there maybe do a larger rollout? So it varies from, let's say, B2B to B2C. But again, it's going to be case by case. Next, key metrics and success. This is again common knowledge. They just want to understand how you measure that, and then how you're going to measure your success as a PM at the company. Sometimes this is as simple as you're going to be delivering more revenue at the end of Q2. Sometimes it's I want to deliver more retention in our users by the end of Q3, something like that. And then lastly, being able to show risks and how to mitigate them. Risks usually comes up when there's something more technical that needs to be built, or if there are some regulations in the industry, you have to be able to understand and identify those. So using this, let's say, as a boilerplate for structuring your case study, let's kind of go through some prompts. These are some sample prompts that I've received when I was interviewing, and then we'll go into the sample case studies. But these prompts, again, what they're good for is really helping you understand kind of your direction and focus. So in this, for example, prompt, this was given by a roadside assistance company. They basically wanted me to do the following deliverable down here, which was, provide an overview experience of a new mobile web payment experience, create a user flow of it, a user story, and a few bullets on the rollout plan. They said, email this within the next 3 to 5 days. And this is essentially that prompt. And it's kind of targeted in the sense that they give you a little backstory on, the sector and what you're going to be doing and the deliverable. And so what's good practice here is, especially as a PM, you want to ask questions, even if this prompt is very self-explanatory. Ask questions about, well, are we solely focusing in the North American market? Are we going to be focusing in Europe? Are we, for example, using, like, kind of ask more deeper questions, so that way you can create a better product case study. So this is one example that you might receive. This is another one from a healthcare company that I was interviewing at, where they wanted me to create a hypothesis to see which of these two payment solutions will be better and more optimal. And I could build, for example, wireframes with it, but it wasn't required. And they even told me don't spend more than four hours on this assignment. Now, normally when a company tells you don't spend more than 4 hours, if it takes you longer than 4, then that's, by all means, probably put in that effort and the time, because you don't have all the background knowledge that this company has, right? You need to probably understand, well, how do other payment options work at other healthcare startups or in the healthcare industry? You need to kind of learn a little bit of that to then help you do this assessment. Because one of the things I learned is that when you go into these interviews and on-sites presenting these case studies, they do want to know that, hey, you have some industry knowledge, or at least you're very good at connecting the dots at a very high level. And so that is basically, for them, when they hear information like that, that means they can trust you in learning the industry in like your first 6 months on the job. So it's important to spend some time learning that and then create the assessment. And then last one here, this is like another take-home assignment prompt where they were basically giving me a lot of context about the problem. And this was, I think, on the last page of the prompt, which was, what kind of questions would you ask your head of product in order to launch this feature? Identify what that product would look like. And then moving forward, how would you determine to monetize this product? So again, they sometimes can be explicit, sometimes they can be very generic. And so it's up to you to ask those questions and make sure, you build the right thing. In this case, again, when people say that it's only going to take you 2 hours, again, 2 hours sometimes seems, I think, quite low. Usually it will take a bit more time if you want to do a good job, and if you want to present, yourself in a good way, you probably should spend more than 2 hours. But again, it's up to your, I guess, level as a PM. If you're more junior, it might take you longer. If you're more seasoned, maybe less so. Okay. So now let's move on to some sample case studies that I put together. And these are real case studies that I built for companies when I was doing my interviewing rounds early last year. And some of them are, really good. some of them are really bad. So we're going to start off with the bad ones. And that's my, I think, interview when I was at Bill.com. I had to essentially find a way to improve WhatsApp and build in a new monetization stream. A good case study we're going to talk about is from that roadside assistance platform on how to do a mobile payments product spec. So I'll kind of explain what was good about this case study. And then lastly, the, I guess, best case study that I did was the referral program for this home insurance company called Hippo Insurance. So that involves the spec as well as the presentation deck. So now let's kind of jump into the bad deck and kind of go from there. And I'll breeze through the deck just to kind of show it at a, like in highlights. And then I'll tell you essentially what I could have done better and also the feedback that I received from the hiring team and the panelists. So in this particular case, the reason why building a revenue stream with WhatsApp is considered, I think, at least my least, it wasn't the best experience, or it wasn't the best product spec, is because I, in the beginning, actually misunderstood the question and the goal. And this kind of leads me back to that earlier points that I made, in that if you don't understand something, don't be afraid to ask the team what you need to ship or what you need to do. Because if you don't, you're going to basically create a presentation or deck where it's not actually answering their question. And when you get in front of a panelist group and you're trying to deliver this, and they let's say stop you 20% in, and they say, hey, this actually isn't our question, this is something different, it kind of makes you look bad. But that's one point I wanted to make when looking at this deck. But let's kind of go through the contents of the deck, and I'll kind of show interesting areas that also could have been improved. But that was one key feedback I received, and I recommend everyone to just ask questions earlier and make sure you understand anything before building out a deck. But in this case, my key areas of the deck were pretty okay. I was talking about the Facebook or WhatsApp mission. I was talking about the business goals, the current landscape, going deeper into user needs, problems, a little bit about the persona, and then this business concepts and concepts rank. Think of that as my features or user stories. But these were very high level, and the team, when I was interviewing, wanted something much more niche, much more targeted and focused. So this wasn't also something that they were expecting. So I went too general. They wanted something more targeted. And then what I kind of explained once I ranked these features, I explained why I chose it. I did a more deep dive, explained my go-to-market, my criteria for success, and then I concluded. But again, kind of midway through, they kind of noticed that, again, I wasn't really addressing their question. So you don't want to make that kind of mistake. But in terms of the deck itself, so if you kind of look through it, right, I'm trying to investigate essentially the landscape, the messaging landscape, and where WhatsApp can make revenue. So I essentially highlight where we can make revenue potentially in wallets and business. I then kind of describe the business goal, kind of the Indian market and why I want to target it with some facts. And then I kind of go into user needs, the user persona, business concepts, which again, I kind of, and you can see here when I explain my prioritization, the reach, impact, confidence, engineering resources. This is something where you need to be careful with, because if you are more seasoned, sometimes using a framework like this could be a hindrance, and it might make sense to not explain it in this way, but use, again, like I said earlier, some of your previous knowledge on how you would prioritize in your day job as a PM. Because when somebody, or even when I see this, let's say when I'm interviewing PM candidates today at Dun & Bradstreet, if I see something like this, it shows me that you might not have enough knowledge yet to prioritize well and make quick decisions at the company. So this could be a no-no, and I think they probably saw that as a negative for me when I was interviewing with them. So be cognizant of that. Then I ranked, then I kind of explained more. I even had some mocks of what I would want to, ship potentially. This is good if you can do that, kind of create either printouts of the mobile experience or whatever type of medium you are building for. You can show that. I think they do appreciate that you can kind of do some UX work. So by all means do that. But again, make sure you are, answering the right question. And I think that's the key goal for this one in terms of feedback. Focus on one area, be clear on answering that right question, be cognizant of your framework usage. When you are communicating, make sure it's with excitement, be enthusiastic. Make sure you answer those audience questions well. And if you can, have an appendix which shows other data that you don't necessarily need littered throughout your presentation. Have an appendix for any calculations or things like that. But for this example, it took me 8 to 10 hours. Result, unfortunately, didn't get any offer after this final on-site interview, so it makes sense. Moving on to second example, which again, in my opinion, it's a little bit better, and I think you'll understand why in a sec. So this was the sample prompt, which was trying to build out some new mobile web payments feature for a roadside assistance tool. And so this is kind of my solution to it, in that I made it very clear what the objective is, what's the vision of the product, and these goals were very clearly highlighted in bold, as well as the KPIs and the success criteria. So this was basically very clear for them when they were reading it and understanding how I would be measuring success of this product. Then in terms of features and goals, since this is a product spec, I told them, hey, these are the 3 initiatives we could focus on, but for this case, I'm only targeting mobile web experience. Here's a sample customer persona, and these are the 2 features I'd like to ship with their dependencies. And so that's essentially what I decided to do a deeper dive on, how to do proper internal routing for this payment tool, and then how to do the actual payment experience. Listing the purpose, the user problem, the assumptions, and some acceptance criteria. So again, if you're an individual contributor as a PM, both a junior or mid-level or even senior, you're going to have to write, sometimes acceptance criteria, user stories in Jira, whatever other tool. But they like to see this, so that way they know how you think. So in this case, overall feedback was much better. One thing that I missed was, again, that go-to-market in this case. So how I was going to roll this out. I also didn't list too much risk, so risks would have been important. And given that I had 2 features in my product spec, it might be important understanding which order do you want to ship first. Is there a dependency on one or the other? So those were the key feedback I received for this. And this spec actually moved me to the final round for this roadside assistance company. And it took me roughly 4 to 6 hours to complete. And lastly, the referral system that I had to create for Hippo Insurance. This, I think, was the best deck and best received actually from the team when I was doing the on-site interview. Reason for that is because, again, information was clearly displayed. All of that structure, the structural elements in a product case were clearly shown. And I was able to address those questions that the audience had clearly. And here was that deck. So I kind of started off as saying why this company needed a referral program. Again, made it very clear at a high level. Then I moved to goals. Well, I want a referral program because I want to increase more revenue from our existing user base. So that way they can share essentially referring links to friends and family, right? Then I kind of addressed key assumptions. And again, these are assumptions where you need to kind of understand how a referral system works and also how the company did their current advertising. So again, these are my assumptions and numbers, which I then use in a calculation in my appendix, right? And then in terms of UX, so I didn't really need to create mockups in this case, but rather explain the program. And so a simple UX flow of how somebody would receive the referred link versus the referrer sending the link out was very crystal clear, and the team was able to understand how this flow worked. And if you want, you can easily create these type of diagrams using Whimsical or some other type of UX tool. Those are typically free to use, but this would be very beneficial to build because it just helps convey exactly what the program will look like. So they really liked this, and they didn't really have any questions here. And when engineering asked a few questions at the end on how enrolling to get a quote for this home insurance was done, again, they just looked at this flow diagram and it was very clear for them. So this was good. Then in terms of features, again, and creating those user stories, this was like a spec that I had to create. So I explained at a high level, this is our user story, and these are the necessary, essentially, features or acceptance criteria that we needed. So again, very clear. Same thing, feature 2, very clear. And then how would I run this particular program? So this is essentially kind of jargon for what's my go-to-market. How am I going to track it being, let's say, successful? That would be, the next slide. And seeing if we can essentially drop our customer acquisition cost at the company and increase revenue per policy. That would be like the key metric that I would be tracking. So that worked. Then I'd explain the risks of a referral program, right? So one of the key things that the head of product was really drilling me or grilling me on was, how do we safeguard this type of referring system from gamers, right? Folks that want to game the system. And I basically tried to explain with the best of my knowledge how we could do that. And again, it might require, you know, this extra research where you need to kind of understand, well, how can you limit the amount of, you know, referrals someone can send out, right? And do some type of maybe cookie tracking, and what have you. So these are things that you need to, you know, kind of go out of the box and do this research, because anytime you are presenting this information and knowledge, you should not just blatantly put something on the screen, but you should have also some context and know why you put it up, because they will ask questions for it. And then of course I had an appendix, explained a sample referral calculation. So with this new referral program, how much new revenue are we going to generate in a year? And I kind of explained it using, you know, if only 20% referrals came in, this is how much revenue that could be coming in. This was a very simple calculation, right? Because I don't have their numbers and how they truly would calculate this, but they appreciated the fact that I was able to crunch the numbers and show some type of ROI. And then of course, show some market data on, you know, user needs in the insurance industry, also particular sources of, you know, where I got some of my data from. But for the most part, the feedback that I received here, everything was actually pretty good. The structure was great, user flows were good. Delivery was also nice in that the presentation style and how you present is very important, meaning it's not just the content that you present, but your personality should come out. So when I was doing this presentation, I tried to add humor in the beginning, and I also tried to add more humor near the end. And you can kind of, you know, if you add lighthearted jokes, it can kind of make things a bit more smoother, nicer, and shows who you are, right? Instead of, you know, having another candidate come in and saying something boring again and again and again, it's, you know, you're kind of being fresh in their eye, and you know, that could actually impact whether they hire you or not sometimes. So it's important to figure out what your presentation style is. Also, it was important to understand the industry, and the result of this deck actually took around 6 to 8 hours to complete. And again, I advanced to the final round to talk with co-founders. So this was a good result. So the key thing I want to share with the team, key takeaways are the following. You definitely follow a structure, and you can reuse that structure for all your, you know, future product cases that you do have. So have that in place. Definitely practice as much as you can. Practice with others, practice with yourself, answer a prompt and create these cases, right? I think it's truly valuable. Get feedback is a very important piece from the hiring manager or panelist when you do finish. I think it's crucial that you learn what you can do better and optimize going forward in the future. And that's just good product management. And lastly, be on time. Be on time means if you know, you're going to say you're going to deliver this spec or this or something to the company in 3 days, deliver it in 3 days and kind of keep your word, right? They want to know also, hey, if he said this, he's going to do this. And, you know, as a PM, you need to kind of have and respect those type of obligations. And of course, other ways to succeed, you know, practice with other PMs. You can get a mentor, like using Product Hired. We have tons of mentors on the site right now that can help guide you in interview preparation. I also recommend putting all of your case studies in one repo, so that way you can kind of copy and paste and make things more effortless going forward. Again, want to thank the product sponsors for everybody for making this conference possible, and you know, continuing to support ProductCamp here in Austin. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to chat in our yellow channel group. And if actually anybody needs mentorship in product management, either career or resume guidance, you can reach out to me at Product Hired. That's kind of my picture and my profile. So by all means, don't hesitate to reach out. So I think time's up, but is there, I know I kind of sped through this. This was more of like a execution type presentation, but any kind of questions from everyone in the call? Or comments, ways that I could, let's say, improve this deck or presentation?
I really like this. My name's Dale Briggs. I'm also in Austin, and I'm on the Agile coaching Scrum Master side of things, work a lot with product managers, and this is the first time I've ever been to ProductCamp, but this was, I liked what you put together here, so I can better understand the cases that product managers put forth, and I guess this is aimed for getting folks hired, and this is really awesome. One of the things I was going to say is I do a lot of metrics, and there's an old Dan Roam book called Back of the Napkin. And one of the coolest things he's got in there is he's got this thing that says the why, and he'll say, like he shows the how as being kind of a flowchart looking creature and things like that. But for the why, which you had in there on I think there was a business concepts in the first one, but it showed like there was something that showed like the market segmentation, I thought.
I think this.
Yes, yes. So the landscape there. So what he does in that, he was showing this book's old. This book's like when the Nintendo Wii came out, right?
Yeah.
And it's showing, hey, he shows a multivariable plot. He shows a quad thing pretty much, and he shows like, hey, here's Xbox, they take up this much, and here is PlayStation, they take up this much, and here's all the area of casual gamers that the Nintendo Wii could grab. So it explains why and something. And I was just thinking your chart here is awesome, and you could have that shrunk to the bottom part, and you could have that graph at the top. But so I can get discussion on folks. I almost make the visual bigger and the text smaller. And if they want to see that, I'll do a pop in PowerPoint or whatever. But it just so they get the message like that. But I really like this. This was very nice. Thank you for putting it together.
No problem, Dale. And I think you have a good valid point. If you can show visuals, by all means show visuals because they can convey the message much more faster and cleaner.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I just like doing text. I'm just used to text and charts and tables, but that's a valid point.
Yeah.
Right. Any other questions or comments from the group? All right.
I was going to ask about the ranking you did.
The ranking?
Yeah.
Case study?
Yeah, I was just kind of interested. So they gave you a product and asked you to go about writing the user stories and putting together a case for it. Is that okay? And yeah. And so did you determine the ranking yourself, or did they set some of this up and then you had to determine it, or?
Yeah, so typically in these interviews, they want you to prioritize it and then tell them why you did that decision.
Okay.
Really all about decision making. Product managers need to do that quite a bit and make a few decisions every day.
Sure.
So they basically told me, hey, we need a feature that can increase revenue for WhatsApp. What does that look like? And normally, you don't want to just give one feature because that's very limiting. You want to give a list or a few, and
Sure.
you need to prioritize and pick and kind of do a trade-off analysis. And that's what they want to see. And normally that's how it is actually when you are working as a PM.
Yeah.
There's always a trade-off with, do I build, in my current day job right now, do I need to, let's say, build this new report or this suite of reports? And what's the trade-off? And the trade-off could literally be that there are more customers willing to have this report versus this one. So more revenue come here, I'm going to prioritize that one.
Sure.
So that helps. Or if there's technology limitations, okay, then maybe we can't build it because our team is not ready yet. So we're going to opt for the other one, perhaps.
Right.
So trade-offs are key, and it's actually something what Facebook and even Google, they assess in their interviews, but they don't do something with product cases. They have a different format of testing PMs.
Yeah.
Much more different. But this is for everybody else, which is, 95% of the other companies, they will probably give you a product case to go.
Gotcha. No, this was excellent.
Hey, Nicholas, this is John Thorse. As a program manager, I'm working with multiple product managers. So it really helped to see the case studies that are outside my domain regarding what good, better, best looks like. So I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad this was helpful. And again, I'm going to put this presentation deck in the yellow channel. So everyone's going to have access to it. So I'll actually do that.
Great.